Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, for the You Are Mark on the World show, and I am really excited this afternoon that we have an opportunity to speak with Danielle Zurovcik, who is the CEO and founder of WiCare Solutions, a remarkable social entrepreneur that was recently recognized as one of the finalists in the Hult Prize, which is clearly the most prestigious prize in social entrepreneurship for student entrepreneurs, and my heavens, maybe the most impressive, important prize among all student competitions. $1 million prize was at stake. This is a big, big deal, and Danielle has agreed to take some time to be with us this afternoon to visit with us. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to congratulate you for being a finalist in this program. I understand you had an opportunity to actually be at the Clinton Global Initiative when Bill Clinton announced the winner and congratulated the winner. Did you have an opportunity to meet him personally?
Yes, we met both Bill and Hillary Clinton, so it was exciting for everybody, I think, to have that opportunity.
That is really amazing. That is really amazing. What a great opportunity. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you did to become such a renowned entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about, now you're from MIT, right?
Yes, I did my master's and PhD there in mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering.
Wow. Okay, so WiCare Solutions, excuse me, please forgive me. WiCare Solutions makes affordable medical devices, and it makes sense that a PhD in mechanical engineering would be handy in that kind of work. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how it's going.
So what we're working on now is a negative pressure wound therapy device. Negative pressure wound therapy is typically pretty complex. It requires electricity and batteries, and it takes 70 watts of power and costs about $100 a day if you were to pay for it in the U.S. And therapy could last up to 3 months, and so it gets really pricey. And so after we'll take a step back. So this started out of a class, out of my master's thesis when I was ready to graduate MIT and never designed a medical device. I took a class and a doctor wanted a negative pressure wound therapy device for Honduras. Dr. Robert Sheridan out of Shriners Hospital did in Boston. And so I worked on a team, and after that class, it was a class, and typically when you're in a class, you're taking multiple classes and you're doing a small project. I just saw the value in doing these devices and the impact it could make. And then I also, for the first time in my life, and I was ready to graduate with my master's and leave, I finally found what I was passionate about, which was a good find, because I was still floating through school, knowing I was doing well, but not knowing exactly what I was here to do. And you sit next to these people all the time that they're very passionate about what they did, and so I was lucky enough to find that passion then. So I switched my master's thesis, worked on this project, and then I stayed for my PhD, not working on this project originally, but working on it on the side of my research. And I was able to find a new team, Dr. Riviello out of the Brigham, and Dr. Gita Modi, and after the earthquake in Haiti, they had millions of devices donated, and we started getting, at that time we put it on one patient in Rwanda, and it did really well because we wanted to know if Rwanda was interested in a clinical trial. And so we were sitting there, and a few months after that one case, and we were preparing for a trial in Rwanda, we started getting emails from doctors that were familiar with that one case in Rwanda, and they said, we are flooded with wounds in Haiti right now, and we can't use donated devices because we don't have electricity. And they had the devices, they just couldn't use them for all their patients. And so we sat there and we thought, wouldn't it be nice if we were so far ahead that we could do this? And then we kept on getting emails, and this is like weeks after the earthquake, saying, wounds are getting infected because we can't keep up with the dressings. And next thing you know, we got 400 devices donated and took 50 down on a plane with a team of 5 clinicians, or 5 people, 4 clinicians and myself. And Haiti went really well. And so after that earthquake, we applied it very limitedly in Haiti, but we treated many patients. We being the doctors, I was kind of there as the engineering help. But after that, we pursued a phase 1 clinical trial in Rwanda. It was approved through the U.S. and the Rwanda regulatory. And that trial, we did 85 dressings, and we had no adverse events. And we saw the results of it wasn't testing, it's testing safety and function and not necessarily efficacy, which is wound healing rate. But we saw that we had a great thing going. So when I graduated from MIT, I immediately launched the project in the actual company and applied for a grant and have been working under that grant ever since from Camtech out of MGH. And so that gave me some money to work with and to continue this process without a salary, of course. And it allowed me to just form new partnerships and go on it as a business instead of as a student. And it was a great transition. And so far we've been pursuing FDA, regulatory approval, manufacturing, and also forming partnerships overseas to do more trials. So partnering with Mass General Hospital in their innovation center in Kenya, forming relationships with Doctors Without Borders for potential trials and places like that. So after the earthquake in Haiti, which I thought was really exciting and also scary at the same time, is there was one article that was written about us by Fast Company, and that got picked up by Yahoo News that morning. And that morning, I got over 4,000 emails from over 80 countries asking about the device or congratulating us. But and I still continue to get emails from all over saying, I need negative pressure wound therapy, and I hear you have the device. And I say, well, it's not approved yet, but you're definitely on my mailing list for when it is approved and available. So
when will it be available?
Next year is my plan. So I'm currently manufacturing, of course, is setting up our quality systems. I didn't realize, what a task that is, but it's a pretty daunting task, especially when you're a startup with little funding. But we've been able to strap things together, and many people have helped in this project in pushing things forward through pro bono work to just doing, giving us small grants here and there. And so our goal is to at least start trials in Kenya and the Congo and Cambodia, and then also in potentially a few other countries like Haiti next year, early next year, while we pursue FDA and get that by mid next year. So that's our timeline. And we're anticipating that things go smoothly, but of course, sometimes they don't. But I'm confident to say 2015.
That's great. How much you mentioned that in the U.S. the competing technology costs about $100 a day. Describe what you think this will cost for hospitals or consumers or patients in places like Rwanda when you're done.
Yeah, so our goal price point is, we did studies, and actually the Hult Prize really pushed us to look at urban slums, which is a very, very significant region as far as resources go, and limited resources is more how you would say it. But our goal is to get it to the price point that competes with what they have available today, and that is gauze. They change gauze dressings once or twice a day. And at first, I used to say people pay $1.50 a day for these wet-to-dry gauze dressings in these environments, and people said, you're crazy, they can't afford that. But even after I visited slums in Kenya, in Nairobi this past August, and people are actually paying more than $1.50 a day. But our target is $1.50 a day, or whatever price point they're paying to reach that, and make the margins as small as we need to reach that. Because I think it should be an option, an affordable option for treating wounds. I don't necessarily think that it should be the only option. I think wet-to-dry gauze dressing is fine for a lot of wounds, and negative pressure has its place as well.
So what are the situations where a negative pressure device makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I just want to put it out there. I'm not an MD, but I have worked along the side of them for many years now. And so traditionally, it was only used for chronic wounds. And in the US, it's typically only used for chronic wounds because of the high cost and the lack of reimbursement. Chronic wounds are diabetic ulcers, pressure sores, and venous leg ulcers. Typically, those three make up chronic wounds. A chronic wound is a wound that hasn't progressed to healing for typically, people say 3 months is the time frame. Some people have wounds for years, and that was a surprise to me. The first wound I saw was, well, I saw a few before that, but the first actual chronic wound I saw was actually in Haiti in the disaster relief, and I thought, wow, I just couldn't believe that this lady had been living with this wound for so long. And then acute wounds, they're starting to use it for acute wounds. The military uses it on acute wounds. Acute wounds being trauma or burns. Burns actually it has an interesting place for negative pressure, I think. We've treated grafts and burns and had pretty good results, I think, from my non-MD opinion with it. But so I think our trials will really prove where our device has its place. But really the acute wounds, why people use it, if it's a high risk for infection, because this reduces infection risk, and it will also heal the wound faster. But since it's so costly, the thing that you're balancing is the cost versus is this wound going to heal on its own anyway with less costly treatments. And the answer is typically yes, but it might get affected along the way, and then that could become chronic. So it really depends on the wound.
So what I'm envisioning when you say negative pressure is that there's some sort of sucking, probably very, very slight, but it's a sucking.
It's a sucking.
Have I got that idea right?
You have it right. It's kind of crazy to think that, you know, you're paying all this money to literally suck on your wound. And there's key technologies in our design that allows us to do it mechanically and for significantly less cost. But with that said, we're literally just sucking on the wound. There's not too much. The science behind it is it for diabetics, which it was originally used for, it brings blood to that area. So circulation is typically the reason why they're not healing their wounds. So. Right. They get the circulation, they get the nutrients from their bloodstream, and now they can heal their wounds. But if you look at other wounds, it's the circulation, but it's also, it stresses the cells, so it causes them to divide faster. So it's actively promoting wound healing. So people that can't heal their wounds, it's actually doing that for them. And then also for, it's removing infectious material, and it's keeping a moist environment, and moist wound healing. Although I hear some people say it's debatable, I mean, if you look at the literature over the last 20 years, moist wound healing has been traditionally what has been proven to be beneficial for all wounds, using negative pressure or not. So the scabs and letting your wounds air dry is not actually, it's been shown to not actually be the best thing for your wounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that may have evolved in a day when we didn't have negative pressure tools, right? I'm not an expert on evolution, but in any case, would there be a role for your devices in the developed world, in Europe, in the United States, Japan? You know where the developed world is. Is there a market for this?
Yes. I mean, I think that, you know, we actually complement the current market. So the current market is a $1.3 billion market across the U.S. and Europe. So it's significantly in the U.S. I think it's 0.4 million in Europe, and the rest is the U.S. So you could imagine how much money is being spent in the U.S. on negative pressure. That's only treating about a third of the population that would be treatable with negative pressure per day. So that's because of denied insurance claims, things like that. You have to do a lot in order to get negative pressure. As far as you have to have tried other therapies, had them fail, show that those have failed before they'll administer negative pressure. Now, so I think, but they do treat the worst of wounds with negative pressure, and it's been very successful for a lot of those cases. So I think we really complement it in treating wounds that, you know, might traditionally not be treated with negative pressure because of costs. but fit in that that risk area where they're at high risk for becoming chronic, but yet won't be reimbursed for negative pressure right now. Or patients that are extremely mobile and don't want to deal with batteries and electricity and plugging in. And their wounds aren't that bad, so they're not bedridden, and they want to get back to work, and they don't want the noise of a pump, an electrical pump, with them. It would be a great option for them as well.
That's great. Well, I congratulate you for the great work you're doing. What a huge difference you'll make in the world.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
And it sounds like you're just absolutely off to the races, and this award certainly has given you some great exposure. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. But before you go, why don't you tell us how people can engage with you? Certainly there will be some people who watch this who are interested to learn more about how they can engage with you.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty good at catching up with my email all the time. So you could always email me. My email address is drz, so that's Dr. Z. Those are my initials, but I ended up getting my PhD, so it fit in the end anyway. But at WiCareSolutions.com. So the email or the web address of the company.
So WiCare is spelled WiCareSolutions.com, right?
Yes, it stands for, our company is incorporated as Worldwide Innovative Healthcare. So it's an acronym. Play on
Fantastic.
words.
Well, again, Danielle, congratulations and thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you so much.
Alrighty, let's do some good.